É, mas usando, tá vendo GPS?
Turn right.
Bom, esse é o nosso carrinho, nosso Impala. A gente acabou de chegar aqui no Kennedy Space Center. A Priscilla. Fala oi, Priscilla.
Oi, Priscilla.
Oi, Priscilla. Oi, eu.
Oi, eu.
Oi, eu. É ali, ó. Só que agora eu não sei, porque aqui tinha... Eu vi na internet que tinha algumas limitações a respeito de bagagem e tal, de bateria extra. Pode ser que eu esteja enganado, né? Mas eu vi na internet. Aí entra ali, eu acho. Faz a vistoria da bagagem, mochila e tal. E aí entra. Frente ou atrás?
Couple of rules before we get started. Number one, for your own safety, please remain seated while the bus is in motion. We don't want anyone to fall and get hurt. And number two, as a courtesy to other guests, please turn off all cell phones. And also, there will be some stops on this tour. When you go to get up at the stops, please watch your heads. Don't bump your heads when you get up. And also, please watch your step when getting on and getting off the bus. We just don't want anyone to fall and get hurt. And with that, let's go ahead and begin. Please turn to page 1 in your books. Page 1. Space Shuttle Program. Space Shuttle is NASA's reusable space vehicle designed for the transport of astronauts and payloads to and from Earth orbit. Kennedy Space Center is NASA's processing and launch site and prime landing location for the Space Shuttle program. The Kennedy Space Center is responsible for the assembly, checkout, and launch of Space Shuttle vehicles and their payloads, landing operations, and turnaround of Space Shuttle orbiters between missions. Kennedy Space Center is one of only a handful of places in the entire world where people fly into space. And as you can see on page 1, we have got everything labeled. Top right hand side, you can see the 2 launch pads, pads A and B, Launch Complex 39. To the left of the launch pads, you can see where the vehicle assembly building is located. Just above the vehicle assembly building to the left is our shuttle landing facility. Below the shuttle landing facility, you can see where we just came from, the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. And to the right of the visitor complex is Kennedy Space Center's industrial area. The Kennedy Space Center was established in the early 1960s after NASA acquired property on Merritt Island for their primary launch facility to support the Apollo program. At first, it was known as the Merritt Island Launch Area. Later on, it became the John F. Kennedy Space Center in honor of President John F. Kennedy. Land that was once made up primarily of marshes and sandy scrub growth was transformed into NASA's prime launch center. From 1968 to 1972, Kennedy Space Center launched 10 Apollo missions, 9 of which went to the moon, 6 of which landed on it. After the Apollo program came to an end, the Kennedy Space Center supported the Skylab missions and the Apollo-Soyuz test project program. The Space Center's facilities were modified in the late 1970s to support NASA's Space Shuttle program. Kennedy Space Center encompasses approximately 140,000 acres. That's roughly 220 square miles. It's about 34 miles long, north to south, and about 10 miles across at its widest point. However, NASA only uses a very small percentage of all this land, less than 10%. That's it. Most of this land remains undeveloped in its natural state. You see, ladies and gentlemen, shortly after the establishment of the John F. Kennedy Space Center, the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge was established to manage Kennedy Space Center property not used by NASA. Because this property is located at the border between the temperate and subtropical regions, means that it is a very important area for many species of plants and animals. The refuge provides habitat and protection for migratory birds, threatened and endangered species, and native wildlife diversity. More than 500 species of wildlife call this gentle but untamed land home. This unique relationship the refuge shares with NASA is proof that nature and technology can peacefully coexist and thrive. And the refuge actually serves a dual purpose. Number one, of course, it protects the ecology of the wetland environment. And number two, it provides a valuable safety and security buffer zone around the launch complex. Now, please turn to page 17 in your books. Page 17. We're going to change the subject for a while. Delta 4s, the newest and largest generation of the Delta family of expendable launch vehicles. And you can find Complex 37 on page 17. That one's labeled if you want to find it. Complex 37, page 17. Home of the Delta 4s. That's the Banana River out there on the right. Used to be the home of the Titans. And you can find Complex 40 on page 17. That one's also labeled Complex 40, page 17. Now, unlike Complex 37 over there, 40 is not active at this time. We had our last Titan launch April 2005. Travel, remote sensing satellites observe the Earth from space, giving us a global perspective, providing weather forecasts, essential military information, and valuable data to help us better understand and manage Earth's resources. Those are a handful of examples of the different payloads that we've launched from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. These unmanned launch vehicles, like the launch pads, 39A and 39B, to make sure everything fits and works properly before we actually install the equipment out at one of our two pads. Launch equipment test facility out there on the right. And coming up on the left, once we make this next turn, you'll see Kennedy Space Center's Parachute Refurbishment Facility. Parachute Refurbishment Facility coming up on the left. Remember the video, Liberty Star and Freedom Star? They towed the booster casings back into Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. This is where we bring their parachutes to be washed, dried, and repaired. Each of those boosters uses a pilot, a drogue, and 3 main parachutes. We reuse the main parachutes up to 15 times each, depending on the condition they're in when we get them back. One main parachute from a solid rocket booster, just one, could almost cover half a football field. That's how big they are. Tall building coming up on the left. That's Kennedy Space Center's Canister Rotation Facility. The Canister Rotation Facility maintains 2 payload canisters used to transfer payloads between the processing facilities, such as the Space Station Processing Facility, and the 2 launch pads. Believe it or not, most of the time we do not load the vehicle until it's out of the pad in a vertical position. That's how it's done for most space shuttle missions. Coming up ahead of us on the right, operations and checkout. About 3 or 4 days prior to a shuttle launch, the astronauts will fly down from the Johnson Space Center in Texas. Most of you have heard of the Johnson Space Center, right? Mission control, where the astronauts train. Well, the astronauts fly down here to Kennedy before launch, and they stay at operations and checkout. In a few moments, you're going to see a bridge that connects the 2 sections of the building. I'd like you to look below the bridge, bottom right side. find the handrails. Anyone familiar with that footage of the astronauts walking out on launch days in their orange launch and entry suits? That's where it happens. There's a bridge. Look below the bridge, bottom right side, right by the handrails. That's where the astronauts walk out. Their crew quarters are located on the 3rd floor, right-hand side. That's also where the Apollo astronauts had been intensively developed for launching military rockets and the rockets employed by NASA during the early years of the space age. The Cape's facilities were adequate for projects Mercury and Gemini and the first part of the Apollo program launch pads, but due to the size and complications of handling the Saturn V, this was out of the question. It would have been very difficult to prepare a Saturn V horizontally and then erect a vertical. There would have been bending effects and all kinds of stresses on the vehicles. Saturn V's had to be erected stage by stage in a vertical position, and it had to be done inside. Coming up ahead of us, the Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB as it's often called. The building with the American flag and the NASA insignia painted on the front. Referred to as the heart of Launch Complex 39, the Vehicle Assembly Building is an enclosed structure that provides a protected environment for stacking and integration of the space shuttle in a vertical position. Completed in 1966, the Vehicle Assembly Building was originally designed and built for the final assembly of the Apollo Saturn V's for the manned missions to the moon. The VAB was modified for space shuttle operations. We have a video that will show you what goes on in there. This will show you space shuttle assembly. So you're going to watch your screens again. I'll be back in a bit.
The VAB stands for Vehicle Assembly Building, and we put the shuttle together here. So we start with a mobile launch platform. We bring it in. We get it ready to stack the solid rocket boosters on it. Then we process the external tank and mate the external tank to the solid rocket boosters, and then we bring the orbiter over from the OPF, the orbiter processing facility.
My name is Mike Salson. I'm an overhead crane operator in the VAB. This particular crane right here, we have the ability to move a 64th of an inch north, south, east, or west, and 50 thousandths of an inch up or down, and do that consistently. We hook up this crane and then a smaller crane, the 175-ton crane, to the orbiter. And we take it from horizontal to vertical. And then we pick it up 16 stories and bring it into the high bay, and then stack it to the external tank and the solid rocket boosters. You can look out the windows and you say, wow, look, there's the orbiter.
Well, the cranes are probably around 460 to 485 feet up in the air on our crane rail. The building is roughly 525 feet, so we're right up in the top of the rafters.
The orbiter spends about 1 week in the Vehicle Assembly Building. After that 1 week, we're ready to carry the vehicle out to the pad.
And you've got shuttle.
The press site, the primary site for news media activities here at the Kennedy Space Center. All you have to do is find the American flag and the flagpole, and then look right next to the flagpole and you'll see our famous blue countdown clock. This area may look a little familiar to many of you. All the people you see on TV lined up in front of the water by the countdown clock watching the space shuttle take off, that's the press site out there on the right. Minimum safe distance for a space shuttle launch is about 3 miles away. The only people that will be any closer besides the astronauts, fire rescue. Otherwise, minimum safe distance, about 3 miles. Now, after shuttle assembly is complete, the mobile launcher platform with the space shuttle mounted on top in a vertical position has to be transported as a unit from the Vehicle Assembly Building out to one of our 2 pads. Here is the assignment. Pick up a structure that weighs well over 11 million pounds and stands more than 200 feet tall and smoothly transport it either 3.4 miles out to pad A or 4.2 miles out to pad B while keeping the platform level and the shuttle vertical. Watch your screens. Here's how they do it. Here's NASA's crawler transporters.
Hi, I'm Bob Myers, Assistant Engineer for Crawler Transporter. Been on the Crawler Transporter now for about 20 years. Crawler is a vehicle that's used to move the shuttle and the mobile launch platform from the vehicle assembly building to the pad. It does equate pretty much just like being on a ship. It takes about 18 to 20 technicians and 7 engineers to move it along the crawler. The crawler itself is about 6 million pounds. It's comprised of 4 trucks and 8 tracks. Each of those tracks have 57 cleats, each weighing a ton. The crawler carries 9 million pounds of mobile launch platform plus another 3 million pounds of shuttle assembly. So you're looking at about 18 million pounds rolling down the crawlerway at one time. It is never routine. There's always something a little bit different. We're always changing the crawler just a little bit. We're always making it a little bit better. So it's enjoyable to work on. It's not how fast the crawler can move, it's how slow the crawler can move. The crawler itself is able to actually position within an 1/8 of an inch tolerance. The crawler transporter typically has to dock the mobile launcher and shuttle stack within plus or minus an inch of its landing spot. STM is JVCT, net 104. You try to envision it just like a job, but at the same time, there's a great sense of satisfaction that you've actually put a piece of hardware into space.
The crawler transporters move along a specially designed roadbed called the crawlerway, out here on the left. Consists of 2 40-foot wide lanes separated by a 50-foot grassy median. The crawlerway provides a traveling surface for the crawler transporters between the vehicle assembly building and the 2 launch pads. Yes, the crawler transporters do straddle the grassy median in the middle. They take up the whole crawlerway. Each lane of the crawlerway supports the treads on that side of the vehicle. On average, it takes a crawler transporter about 5 to 7 hours to get a space shuttle from the vehicle assembly building out to one of our 2 pads. And that is known as a rollout. And we usually roll out about 1 month before launch. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, pads A and B, Launch Complex 39, site of all 132 space shuttle launches, and 17 manned and unmanned Saturn V and Saturn 1B launches for Apollo, Skylab, and the Apollo-Soyuz test project program. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, these are converted Saturn pads. They were extensively modified for the space shuttle program. Every astronaut that went to the moon took off from out here. These 2 pads are roughly octagonal in shape with 8,716 feet between the 2 pads. That's about 1.6 miles. The distance between the 2 pads was dictated by the size and explosive energy of a Saturn V. That's why they're so far apart. That's also why the vehicle assembly building is so far away. Each pad covers about 160 acres. Coming up ahead of us on the left, one of Kennedy's Space Center's crawler transporters. Assembled at the Kennedy Space Center in 1965, the crawler transporters were originally designed and built to transport the Apollo Saturn V's from the vehicle assembly building out to the launch pads. Now they carry the shuttles. They have been serving NASA well for more than 4 decades. Each crawler transporter is approximately 131 feet long, 114 feet wide, covers an area about the size of a baseball diamond. Each vehicle consists of 4 double-track crawlers, so there's 8 tracks altogether on each crawler transporter, 57 cleats on each track. You'll see the other crawler.
Nesse ônibus, ó, que é o ônibus que traz a gente pra cá, e aqui é onde foi feito o lançamento do Apollo.
and see where Gary went?
Esquenta não.
Well, again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is Ruth, and on behalf of NASA and the Kennedy Space Center, welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Talina, and welcome to the Firing Room Theater. If you need to leave this room at any time, please push hard on the doors to your right. Once again, as a courtesy to others, we do ask that there is no flash photography during the presentation. Thank you, and enjoy.
This is the firing room, launch control for the Apollo missions. This is not a mock-up. These are the very consoles we sat at when men first took off to fly to the moon. The tragedy of Apollo 1 had put us a year and a half behind. We were making up for it in one big leap, and we were doing it with a rocket that no man had ever flown before. It was a few days before Christmas, 1968, when Apollo 8 sat on the pad. She was the first of a new kind, a moon rocket. This was the Phoenix, risen from the ashes of Apollo 1. The first Apollo crew did not die in vain. This was to be their testament. "36 stories high, she had been fully fueled throughout the night. The liquid oxygen in her tanks caused ice to form on the outside of the craft. The extreme temperature differences between the air and the sub-zero fuel caused the metal skin of the rocket to expand and contract. Everyone who was on the pad agreed. It was as though the rocket was alive, breathing, straining at the leash. Earlier in the morning, astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders had made their final preparations before taking that long ride out to the waiting spacecraft. The minimum safe distance from Saturn V at liftoff was 3 miles. The reason was simple. When fully fueled, the rocket contained the explosive power of an atomic bomb. As the clock counted down, the astronauts and all of us in launch control went through the pre-flight checks. Our hands on the controls of the most powerful, most complex machine ever built. It had over 2 million separate systems. And to bring these men back alive, everything had to work perfectly. Each individual system had been tested, but what we didn't know was how they would perform when all 2 million began to work together. That moment would come when the countdown clock reached 0. If a maneuvering thruster failed, if communications broke down, if navigation was off by 1 degree, if any piece of the miles of wiring, circuits, relays, or valves was defective, Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders would pay with their lives. As they sat, waiting for launch on that chill December morning, these 3 astronauts were back to what they had always been, test pilots. You are now in the final minutes before the launch of Apollo 8, right here where it actually happened. Mankind is about to leave his planet behind and journey to another. It is one of those rare moments when history is not being made, destiny is being embraced.
successfully orbited the moon, and the astronauts returned safely to the Earth. I know. I'm Jim Lovell, and I was one of the crew of this spacecraft, Apollo 8. We were the first men to see the surface of the moon from just a few miles away. But it was the hundreds of thousands of men and women who worked in that team, and the millions of people who supported the mission that really made it possible. That way, I guess, we all went to the moon. Now, on the other side of those doors, you'll find an actual Saturn V moon rocket. It's still the most powerful, the most complex machine ever built. And I guess it's the only one that can take you to another planet. I actually got to fly one on a second flight to the moon called Apollo 13. But that's another story.
Please watch your step as you exit the firing.
Só para ter uma ideia do tamanho disso, ó. Caraca, olha.
We have just a few more guests coming our direction, and we'll begin here in just a moment. If there is anyone who needs to exit during the 12-minute presentation, please do so through the doors to your right only. Thank you, and enjoy.
Houston, we're standing by, over. Columbia, Houston, over. Columbia, Houston, we're standing by, over. Columbia, Houston, over. Houston, Columbia, read you loud and clear, help me. Right, Mike, how did it go, over? Listen, baby, everything's going just swimmingly. Beautiful. Great. We're standing by for Eagle. Okay, he's coming along. We copy out. Yeah, flight controllers, we're off to a good start. Play it cool. AOS LIM. Roger, AOS LIM. Houston, Eagle, how do you read? Bye, Eagle, we're standing by for your burn report, over. Roger, the burn was on time.
As soon as the Eagle reappears, things begin to go wrong. Radio communications break down. Messages to Eagle must be relayed through Mike Collins aboard the command module Columbia. Throughout the crucial final checks, contact with the Eagle keeps dropping out. And Flight Director Gene Kranz inches closer to aborting the mission.
Radar flight looks good.
With the vital computer links temporarily holding, the moment of decision is now.
Okay, all flight controllers, gonna go for landing. Retro. No, I don't. No. Guys, no. Control. No. Telcom. No. ESC. No. Ecom. No. Surgeon. No. Capcom, we're go for landing. Eagle, Houston, you're go for landing. Over. I understand. Go for landing. 1, 0. Ignition, 10%. Yeah.
heading toward the moon at 3,800 miles per hour, Neil Armstrong notices his checkpoints are all appearing too soon. This means a serious navigation error.
You think you're loaded up long downrange?
At these speeds, 3 seconds long means missing the safe landing zone by 3 miles. Suddenly, the computer starts firing the maneuvering thrusters, jolting the ship back and forth. This has happened in simulations, but never this much, never this violent. The smooth descent is becoming a bumpy ride. Before that is fixed, a problem with the onboard computer. The astronauts have rehearsed for thousands of possible malfunctions, but not this one. It had been considered too unlikely. Seconds seem like hours as everyone struggles to remember the meaning of a 1202 program alarm. The deadline to safely aboard is vanishing fast.
Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
A short time later, history is made again.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
For one incredible moment, we are one people with one history, watching our destiny unfold.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It was a moment shared by an entire world.
Man from the planet Earth first set foot upon America. It came indeed for all mankind.
With these first steps, mankind stood on the highest ground, and we saw our planet as our home port in the endless ocean of space.
There was something which was surprising to me. It occurred as I was standing on the surface. Just after we had landed, I'd gone down, standing on the surface, and looking at planet Earth for the first time, seeing the beauty, seeing the finiteness of it, the limits of it, and realizing what a shame it was that people were confronting each other on that planet without realizing what it was doing to the planet. It was a very emotional moment for me. I actually shed a couple of tears. Something totally unexpected for an engineer, fighter pilot to be crying up quietly up there on the moon.
Mankind had achieved a tenuous foothold in the heavens, and a new and exciting world lay waiting to be explored. First mission had stayed for only 1 day, but over the next 3.5 years, 5 more Apollo missions visited the moon, and with each one, we stayed longer, roamed further, and discovered more.
I never thought when I was a kid building rockets, in high school, that we would go to the moon, before the end of the century. I mean, I thought that was something that was way in the future, fantasy.
I was rolling on the moon one day, in a very month of December, May. Look at the size of that rock. That is the best example we got. Just don't stub your toe.
We've got to understand that as a people, we need to stretch. We need to reach beyond our grasp. We need to strive to do things that seem impossible, because in the accomplishment of them, we move society forward.
Boy, isn't the beauty of this place is just absolutely incredible.
One of the astronauts has said those hills that we climbed give our children and grandchildren a different perspective, that they see the mountains that we couldn't see. And so
what we consider impossible, they're dreaming about.
3, 2, 1.
When I have a chance to talk to kids, I tell them, the first thing I tell them is to take the word impossible out of their vocabulary. Go to their teacher tomorrow morning and scratch it out of the dictionary. The word doesn't exist. If I can stand here and tell you that I lived on the moon, that I called the moon my home for 3 days, you tell me what is impossible in this day and age, much less in a generation that follows, much less into the 21st century. Nothing is impossible.
I like exploring things, inventing. I would like to go up there and find out what's really up there.
I would like to be an astronaut. I like to design rockets.
Payload specialist.
I'd be a ground control officer. The thing that my mom can't understand is I'm terrified of heights, but I want to be an astronaut.
There's so many things I'd love to do. I would explore, I'd look for everything. I would try to start a farm. Millions of other galaxies that you might be able to live in.
It's the unknown. Anything's possible.
You may be able to cure certain diseases. Up on Mars and dance on it.
Play basketball, but you can still be short, because then you could like fly up in the air.
Baseball would be awesome. Hit the ball, you get a home run every time.
There are a lot of things that can benefit mankind that we, because of science, we simply cannot do on Earth.
It's such a big universe, and it's kind of strange to think that just this one tiny planet was chosen to have life on it.
I hear they're finding new planets or moons, and they're finding out more about how stars are working, and it makes me feel like it's trying to tell me something.
What's it trying to tell you?
That you belong up there with them.
The Apollo program ended in December of 1972, but our journey into space is just beginning. I'm Neil Armstrong. The future of space travel is being written right now in the dreams and imaginations of a new generation. Perhaps that's the greatest legacy of Apollo. It shows our children and grandchildren that with courage, imagination, and the will to explore, no dream is impossible.
Please watch your
You get back to the center. Everything is still open. The restaurants are open in case you want to get something extra to eat. Gift shop in case you want to pick up some souvenirs. Oh, well, I think of it. Don't throw